integral equations inside FreeFEM, we thought it would be a good idea to have to give a tour of what exactly boundary element method consists in, what are boundary element method and boundary integral equations, and also to talk a little bit about library that I developed for doing a C++ library I developed for doing this. So first of all, what are boundary integral equations? So to explain that, I will start with a model problem, a very typical problem that one has to deal with in wave propagation, for example. So I am considering a PD that will be a Helmholtz equation. So it's a scattering problem. Okay, Helmholtz equation in the exterior of a bounded scatterer. So here I took in 3D. But you can also consider this kind of problem in 2D. I consider an incident wave coming from infinity. So this U incident is a plane wave, okay, with wave number kappa. And this has to be supplemented with the radiation condition so that this problem admits a unique solution. So this is an Helmholtz problem with Dirichlet boundary condition at the boundary of a bounded scatterer, and there is one way to reformulate this PD to solve it that consists in deriving a variational formulation that is volume-based with functions that are defined on a volume that live around the scatterer. And you can somehow truncate the computational box with the PMLs, for example, of absorbing boundary condition. And there is another way that I am going to discuss that consists in another kind of reformulation of the equation, where we will reformulate the problem at the boundary of the scatterer. So here, to show how to do this, I will, first of all, I will make use of the green kernel of the equation. So I need to know this green kernel here. The green kernel of Helmholtz equation is explicitly known. It's given by this formula. And I am looking for the solution under this ansatz form, okay? So here, what has to be determined is this P function, that is a function living on the boundary of the scatterer. And then by construction, because the green kernel satisfies Helmholtz equation except at the origin, okay, by construction, U will satisfy Helmholtz equation, homogeneous Helmholtz equation, provided it admits this form. So the only thing that has to be enforced for U to be solution of my boundary value problem is the boundary Dirichlet condition, Dirichlet boundary condition. And I can enforce this weakly, in a weak manner, by testing this ansatz form with a surface test function, so Q, that will be a function living at the boundary of the scatterer, and then integrating the whole thing, and I end up with this variational formulation. So it's not a variational formulation posed on volume anymore, it's a surface variational formulation. So there are a few specific features in this variational formulation. First of all, it involves not a single integral, but a double integral. So these are surface integrals, but they are double integrals. Second specific features about the kernel that involves not a smooth kernel. The kernel is singular. When x tends to y, the kernel blows up. And on the in addition, it never vanishes. So, which means that any element of the surface gamma is coupled with any other element of this surface. So, okay, this will have important numerical consequences. So it's not the only way of reformulating this scattering problem in integral form. What I have just presented is what is usually referred to as first kind formulation. There are also exists second kind formulation that take this form. I will go fast on, I will not give detail on how to derive this, but it's not very complicated. And usually, integral equations are subdivided into those two categories, either first kind or second kind. So each first kind formulation and second kind formulation have recurrent characteristics. So first kind, usually first kind formulation act as derivation of operator derivation of order +1 or -1. So there is a change in the regularity exponent of the. It applies a change in the regularity exponent. It's more widely applicable. There are situations where you cannot derive an integral equation of second kind, but you can derive an integral equation of first kind, but not the other way around. Okay? It usually leads to more accurate methods, first kind formulation, for the same number of unknowns in the problem. It leads to ill-conditioned system because of this change in this order of derivation. But it's less ill-conditioned than finite element matrices. It has to be, and it leads to ill-conditioned system, but efficient preconditioners are known, and both using either domain decomposition techniques or analytical techniques. So on the other hand, second kind integral operator act as derivation of order 0. So for example, the Hilbert transform, maybe you know about this operator, is a kind of integral operator of second kind. It's slightly easier to implement because maybe it's not very obvious, but the kernel is smoother than the formulation of first kind. But sometimes it does not. You cannot write integral formulation of second kind. So, for example, scattering by very thin objects like screens that you encounter in electromagnetics. You cannot derive integral formulation of second kind for this type of problem. So I have just spoken about how to reformulate the scattering problem, Helmholtz equation in 3D, but many possible extensions. There are many possible extensions. A few remarks, though, as I mentioned, to derive such a formulation, explicit analytical expression of the green kernel must be available. One of the consequences is that only PDEs you can hope to solve with this approach only PDEs with constant coefficients. No hope to okay. So there will be additional remark to complement this. Anyway, so the equations that you can consider to solve like this are Laplace equation, Helmholtz, Yukawa. What I call Yukawa is minus Laplace plus something that is positive. Maxwell's harmonic regime, Maxwell's equation, eddy current models, Lamé systems, Stokes, biharmonic equations, and there are many variants. So you can also, it's also possible to deal with piecewise constant coefficients for the PDEs, piecewise constant, not only constants. You can couple boundary integral equations with finite element methods, so couple integral formulation with more traditional volume-based variational formulations. So, for example, if you have in your computational domain a part of the domain that is with heterogeneous medium and another part with homogeneous medium, you can do boundary integral equation in the homogeneous part, traditional variational formulation in the heterogeneous part. You can also deal with time domain. Okay, so just a simple remark. All the existing integral formulation always rely on the same 4 building blocks that are part of an operator known as Calderon projector. In the case, so here I give the expression of these 4 fundamental operators in the case of the Helmholtz equation. So here, G stands for this green kernel. So you have the single layer operator, you have the double layer operator, where you have a Neumann derivative applied to the green kernel with respect to the y variable. You have adjoint double layer operator with Neumann derivative with respect to x, and you have what is known as hypersingular operator, where you have two derivatives, two Neumann derivatives applied to the green kernel. Okay. So, a few numerical considerations. So first of all, when you have boundary integral formulation, how do you discretize such a formulation? How do you obtain put it in matrix form? So you have to discretize. There are three different ways to discretize, to my knowledge, to discretize this kind of formulation. Okay, you have also other these are not the only three possible possibilities. There also exist other techniques, but I will not go into too much detail. The main discretization methods are first Nystrom method that more or less consists in a finite difference discretization for integral operators. So, but it's not applicable in 3D because you need to know efficient quadrature formulas for arbitrary surfaces, so usually it's not applicable for 3D. It's not really applicable on non-smooth geometry, even in 3D. So polygonal scatterers are complicated to deal with this Nystrom method, and you cannot deal with the hypersingular operator, which is one of the 4 building blocks, and so this is a serious limitation of this approach. Then you have a collocation approach. I will not give details about this. So it consists in discretizing with interpolation approach. And then there is a Galerkin method, variational method, that is the one I am going to discuss, the one that is considered, that will be considered in FreeFEM for boundary integral equations. So here it simply consists in replacing the space of continuous functions living on the boundary with discrete finite dimensional subspace of it. So for example, in 3D, if you have a surface of a scatterer, you generate a triangulation of this surface. So you need to generate the mesh of the surface, not the mesh of the volume. And you construct, for example, P1 Lagrange, finite element functions on this. And then you take this as a variational space for the boundary integral formulation. So a few words about comparison between FEM and BEM. So there are problems that you can only solve with FEM. There are problems you can only solve with BEM, and there are problems you can solve either with one or the other. So in situation where you can solve, okay, so FEM leads to large matrices that are sparse. BEM leads to small matrices that are dense. With the same computational effort, when BEM is applicable, usually it leads to more accurate solution because of the regularization properties of the kernel. BEM can deal with unbounded domains, which you cannot really do with FEM. Actually, when you want to truncate the computational domain in FEM, you have to do something that looks in one way or another, that looks like integral equations. There is no other possibility. And one very interesting aspect of them, in particular for wave propagation problem, is that it does not suffer from pollution effect. So probably you know that when you deal with the wave propagation problem, when you increase frequency of the problem, you have to refine the mesh. And with finite elements, you have to refine the mesh stronger than the increase in the frequency. This is the so-called pollution effect. And this does not really happen with them. You have to keep the quantity h, the mesh width, times frequency. You have to keep it constant, and this should give the same level of accuracy. A few words about characteristic features of the boundary integral equations. So first important feature is that when you reformulate a problem with boundary integral equation, you reduce by 1 the dimension of the problem. So there are fewer unknowns. In 3D, you have to deal with surfaces instead of dealing with volumes. And this is interesting in many respects, in particular for mesh generation, because you have to generate a surface mesh instead of a volume mesh. But the matrices are dense, and the consequence is that if n is the size of the problem, you need O of n square storage, a priori. And the matrix vector product will cost O of n square. So this is quite expensive. Okay. However, the density issue can be circumvented with sophisticated techniques that are known as hierarchical techniques that specifically aim at reducing the storage and accelerating the matrix vector product. But with these techniques, you do not perform exact storage and exact matrix vector product. You make a small approximation. But you get, in return, you get something that is much faster. You get operations that run in O of n log n, or n log Pn complexity. So, what do I refer to under the name of acceleration techniques? You may know about fast multiple methods, or hierarchical matrices, or also H-square matrices, and so on. So this can solve the storage problem and the complexity of the matrix vector problem, but it's rather involved technique. But we will come back to this later, in particular in the talk of Pierre Tournier. Another characteristic feature is that the kernel is singular. What you have to integrate becomes you have to deal with quasi-singular integrals. So you cannot compute the elements of the matrices with naive quadrature techniques. At least for close interactions, you need to rely on special quadrature rules. So I think that I believe that the most popular one are quadrature rules that were proposed by Zauter and Schwab, Stefan Zauter and Schwab. And last, another point is that the condition number of, for second time formation, because they correspond to zero order derivation operators, the condition number does not deteriorate, which is a nice feature, which means that they are somehow intrinsically well conditioned. However, for first-kind formulation, the condition number does deteriorate, although it deteriorates more slowly than for FEM matrices. Okay, now about existing softwares for doing boundary element methods. So in contrast to FEM, in clear contrast to FEM, there exists nearly no established general purpose library for BEM. Okay. In open access, the initiatives I am aware of that are general purpose softwares, let's say, are the following. They are not very numerous. So first of all, there is I think the most serious established initiative is from Timo Betke at University College London. It's a software called BEM++. That is now at its third version. I think it turned to full Python. It's fully coded. It's coded fully in Python, and it deals now until since recently it only deals with densely populated matrices. So it's well documented, that's a nice software. DeepSealab also is another initiative from Mathieu Ossal at École Polytechnique. It's written in full MATLAB, and it also considers various acceleration techniques, so fast multiple, hierarchical matrices. So DeepSealab is very fast. It's a very fast software. However, it's in MATLAB. And then I also heard about a software called Nemo that is developed at École Centrale de Nantes, written in Fortran. However, as far as I understand, it only concerns Laplace operator in 3D, maybe in 2D also, and it deals with densely populated matrices. So that's not so convenient. Besides this, there are also many existing codes in open access, but they are ad hoc codes. So there are also there are also other general purpose codes, but they are not in open access. Many of them are industrial codes that were validated and tested for many years. And it's not easy to have information or exchange about these codes. So EADS, for example, has a big code of this. Thales also. So I just one remark: one should not mix boundary element method with fast multiple methods or acceleration techniques. Fast multiple method is not a general purpose boundary integral equation method. Fast multiple method is a way to accelerate calculus in integral equations. And you find there are open access codes, fast multiple method in open access to solve certain precise equations or group of integral equations, but they are not general purpose. Okay, so now a few words about this library that is being interfaced with FreeFEM. So it's called BEM tool. It's a general purpose BEM library. It's written in C++, mainly the 98 norm of C++. So it's rather basic C++. It's under GNU LGPL license. The development was supported by the ANR research project non-local DD that I am leading. It handles Laplace, Yukawa, Helmholtz, and Maxwell equation because it was initially oriented toward the wave propagation problem. Both in 2D and 3D, it supports 1D, 2D, and 3D triangulations. So when I say 2D triangulations, these are not necessarily flat triangulations. They can 2D triangulation of surfaces, but these are flat triangles systematically, flat simplices. It implements Picard-Lagrange finite elements for k equals 0, 1, 2, but 0 and 1, and especially 1 is the most useful one. You should not do P2 Lagrange finite elements on the polygonal triangulation. And also surface Ravier-Thoma, lowest order surface Ravier-Thoma to deal with Maxwell's equations. It does not handle acceleration techniques. This is outsourced somehow. This is considered to be outsourced because certain acceleration techniques, such as the one that is implemented in H-Tool, Pierre-Henri will come back to that. These acceleration techniques are can be outsourced. Okay, so I'm not dealing with acceleration techniques here. So it's available on GitHub. I think it's rather easy to install because it's header only, and there are not many files in the code. There may be, I don't know, 20 files. Okay, so each file is not huge. It's a couple of hundred of lines. Yes, it heavily relies on templates, And it has currently the following dependencies. So for the computation of special functions, it relies on Boost, but we will switch to GSL in the future. Okay. For linear algebra purposes, I'm usually using Eigen3, but it's just a wrapper. It's not difficult to interface this code with any other linear algebra library. And for mesh generation, it relies on Gmesh, but it's also a wrapper, and you can easily interface with another mesh generation. So I don't know if there is time left. Maybe to show, to comment on the code, on the piece of code, on Bengo. What is the time?
Mais il est moins 20.
C'est bon?
Moins 25. Il reste 5 minutes.
Il reste 5 minutes
à peu près. C'est bon. Après, c'est Pierre-Henri. Après, on mangera moins.
It's very quick, just to show you what a script in Bentool looks like. So as I mentioned, there is not much to. It's just an include. Okay, there is one include to put in the. Because I'm not an expert in programming, so I wanted something that is easy to handle. I think I could not do something more involved or sophisticated. So here I just defined what I'm going to solve here is Helmholtz equation, is the equation I presented on the talk. I am going to assemble the matrix associated to the problem I have presented on a circle. Okay? So I define the weight number and its square. Okay? I need to load, so I have somewhere in my file system, I have a mesh file that contains the mesh of the circle. Okay. It's not very. So I need to load the nodes, the vertices associated to this mesh. Next, I define, I have a class modeling the one-dimensional meshes called mesh 1D. Okay, I need to load the elements associated to this mesh. So I just pass the nodes, okay, that I have just defined, plus a reference that corresponds to a label. Okay, so here it's one. A reference that refers to which are the elements in the mesh associated to my circle. Okay. Next, and this is an important step, I need to orient the mesh. So I need to tell the library to compute the normals that are directed toward the exterior of the computational domain. And this is a non-trivial part, in particular for three-dimensional problems, when I need to deal with non-simply connected boundaries, or non-connected boundaries. Next, I compute the number of elements. It's not very difficult. I distribute the degrees of freedom on the mesh. I compute the number of doves. Okay, and then I assemble the integral operator. So first of all, I declare the integral operator. It's here. Okay, so I need to pass which is the source mesh, which is the target mesh, because as I mentioned, in this variational formulation, you have a double surface integral. So you have a source mesh and a surface mesh. In my presentation, source and target mesh were the same, okay? It was gamma. But you may have formulation where source surface mesh and target surface mesh are distinct, okay? So here it's the same, so I give twice the same mesh as input argument, and I also give the wave number kappa as input argument to know which kernel I have to deal with. So here I specified, with this operator type here, I specified which kernel I want to take into account for my formulation. So here, single layer Helmholtz equation in 2D. Here, it's the matrix where I am going to store the elements of my variational formulation. It's a densely populated matrix, it's a naive data structure. And next, I assemble. So here is a naive assembly procedure where I do a double loop on each element, and for each pair of elements, I compute the interactions. Okay. So here the elements are flat panels. There are 2 degrees of freedom per flat panel. Okay. So here what I am taking into account at each iteration is I'm storing a 2x2 matrix. Okay, 4 interactions, 2 degrees of freedom by flat panel. Okay, in 3D it would be a 3x3 elementary matrices. Okay, so you can also do an assembly looping over the DOFs, and this is helpful when for interfacing this kind of method with an acceleration technique. So it may sound naive to do a double loop over DOFs. I understand. It may sound naive, but it makes things life easier for interfacing this type of rational formulation with the acceleration technique. And that's it. That's all I need to assemble the matrix. Okay. And here, the next section here is just analytical computation for testing purposes. Okay. So here, what I am computing is because I am on a circle, so the operator I am assembling is diagonalized by Fourier harmonics. Okay, on the circle. And so what I am computing here is one coefficient in the Fourier symbol of this operator. Okay, so it's here. And so here how it runs. So alors, là, il faut que je fasse ça. So just first of all, I compile. So as I mentioned, I am relying heavily on templates, but not that much all the same. So I'm not taking ages to compile. Okay, just take a bit of time to compile. That's fine. Okay. Next, I can. So you see how it runs. Now I have 2,000 by 2,000 densely populated matrix. It takes this. So I just made the run here. Okay, it will be the same result hopefully. And okay, my test is positive here. I get 0.7% of relative error. Okay, so I think that's it.
So thanks.
Thanks a lot for your attention.
Question, comment, Olivier?
Just one. Now that you have surfaced in Freechem, you intend to put it?
Yes, so Pierre-Henri is going to present this. Alors, je vais brutalement. Ok.
Appuie sur le. Ah non, c'est bon. Ah non, c'est magique.
Okay, so my name is Pierre-Henri Tournier, and I'll talk about the next step after the presentation of Xavier about the boundary element method. I will talk about compression techniques and what we have put in Freechem and how, as a user, you will be able to do bank in Freechem in the near future. So you already know those guys. I also have Pierre Marchand, who is here. He's a PhD student of Xavier and will defend his PhD thesis next month. And he works on domain decompression methods for them. And I use a lot of his material in this presentation, so thank you, Pierre. Okay. All right, so as I said, I will talk about hierarchical matrices, which is a completion technique for the boundary element method, and then I will show you how, as a user, you'll be able to use this stuff in PFEM, and then I will show you some numerical examples and results, and maybe a live demo if I have time. Okay, so as Xavier said, you have a dense matrix, right, B, and as Xavier said, you have a quadratic cost in storage and complexity for the matrix vector product, and you don't want that, so you need to do something else. So for now, let's assume that B can be written as follows. So sum G equals 1 to R of Uj, Vj transpose. So Uj and Vj are vectors of size n. So B is an n squared matrix. This is square for now for simplicity, right? And now if B can be written like that, now you can see that the complexity will be R times the size of the two vectors, so R times n times 2, since you have U and J, right? And so, depending on R, you will be able to reduce the complexity. So if R is less than n squared divided by 2n, your complexity will be on the order of Rn, and it will be smaller than n squared. And if this is the case, we say that B is low rank. But unfortunately, it's not that easy, so usually B is not low rank, so you need to do additional stuff. But you can always start by writing the singular value decomposition of B, like this, so it's very similar to the first slide. So now you have singular values sigma j, and you have left and right singular vectors, uj and vj, right? And so the first naive idea is, okay, let's just truncate this sum, and I will take the first R terms, and then you have an approximation of the full matrix B, right? But depending on, you don't know if this is a good approximation. And if it's only a good approximation, if the singular values decrease quickly, right? Okay, and so the SVD obviously is costly to actually compute, so it's usually order of n cubed, and it requires to know all the coefficients of the matrix, right? If you want to compute the exact SVD. And as Xavier showed, you have a double integral for computing them coefficients, so this is an expensive part. You don't want to store the whole matrix, and you don't want to compute the whole matrix anymore, because it's expensive. So there are some techniques that do an approximation of such a low rank format that uses only some rows and columns on B, not all the coefficients. And this is called adaptive cross approximation. And for example, partially pivoted adaptive cross approximation is one way of doing it. And this is what is implemented in the H2 library that we'll talk about soon. And this only needs 2 times R times n coefficients instead of n squared. If R is a number of is a rank of the low rank approximation, so the number of terms in the same. Okay.
Touche le fil, ça. Non.
Okay. But the new problem now, the BEM matrices usually do not have fast decreasing singular value, right? So, for example, this is the absolute values of the coefficients of the BEM matrix, of the weakly singular operator. And this is the corresponding singular values of the matrix. It decreases, but it's not fast decreasing, right? And so this is bad for us, but what is interesting for BEM matrices, such as this one, is that you have kind of 2 types of interactions. You have near-field interactions, that are interactions that correspond to 2 sets of degrees of freedom that are close to each other in the mesh, for example. So this will be near the diagonal, or you see you have large values of the coefficients, and this contains a lot of information. So this is not low rank information, so you cannot really compress what is near the diagonal. As you can see, away from the diagonal, you have a hint already that something is a little bit different, because you have all the coefficients are very small in absolute value. And basically, away from the diagonal, you have blocks that correspond to far field interactions, basically for interactions of two sets of degrees of freedom that are far from each other in the mesh. And so this is actually very well represented by a Low-rank approximation. Because the green function inside the band kernel is very regularized in this case. And so the idea is to build a hierarchical representation of the matrix in terms of blocks of the matrix, and you compress blocks that you can compress, which correspond to the far field, and you don't compress the blocks that are not Low-rank in nature near the diagonal. So this is the basic idea of hierarchical matrices. Okay, and so how do you do that? So here there are some steps. So first, you need to build a hierarchical partitioning of your degrees of freedom. So let's say you do P1 finite element, P1 boundary element method. So basically, every degree of freedom corresponds to one node in your finite element mesh, and you partition this mesh, your mesh or your set of degrees of freedom geometrically and hierarchically, right? So here is a basically you have a binary tree. This is the first level of the tree. I have two sets of degrees of freedom, and then I partition each one in two. And so you have here, for example, 3 levels of the binary tree, right? This is called a cluster tree. And now I can use, so this is for the set of degrees of freedom, and now the matrix is actually the interactions between the source cluster and the target cluster. So usually in them you have the same, right? You have a symmetric matrix and you have only one mesh. So this cluster P is the same as this one. And now you need to compute the block tree, which is the interaction between the two cluster trees, right? And basically what you will do is each time you check an interaction, you have a so-called admissibility criterion that tells you, a geometric criterion that tells you, okay, are these two clusters far enough away from each other so that I will be able to compress this block, this interaction between the two clusters. If yes, okay, I'm just compressing this block. If no, I go further, I go down a level and see if I will be able to compress a smaller block. Okay, so basically you start with one big block, which is the whole matrix, right? This is the interaction of this guy and this guy. You have admissibility criterion. So are these two blocks far away enough? Obviously not, because it's the same, right? So you go down a level. So for example, you go down a level in the two clusters. So now you have 4 blocks, right? And you do recursorively you do the same with the 4 blocks. Okay. Now, for example, you will end up with this block, which is the interaction of this subset of degrees of freedom and this subset of degrees of freedom. And maybe it will. Wait, yes. So maybe this corresponds to 2 sets of degrees of freedom that are far away from each other, and you can compress this block. And you can compress it using adaptive cross approximation, for example, which actually doesn't need all the coefficients in this block to be able to produce the correct Low-rank approximation of this block. And you do this for the whole thing recursively, and then you have your hierarchical approximation of your original matrix. So this is a standard representation of your hierarchical matrix. So basically, the red blocks are dense blocks near the diagonal that we are not able to represent correctly by a Low-rank approximation. So we need to assemble as dense blocks and compute all the coefficients, it is needed. And all the green blocks are the Low-rank blocks that we were able to approximate. The brighter the green, the more compressed the block is, and the number is the rank of the block. Okay? Alright, so this kind of algorithm is implemented in the H2 library, which is developed by Pierre Marchand and myself, and it is available on GitHub, the C++ library. And basically, yes, it implements hierarchical matrices, and it can be interfaced with BMTool, because BMTool provides the routines to compute the coefficients to actually build the Low-rank approximations and the dense blocks, right? And it is parallel, so you have a parallel assembly, parallel H matrix vector and H matrix matrix products using MPI distributed and and shared memory parallelism. So basically, distributed parallelism, we have a bound distribution of the matrix for each MPI rank, right? So each MPI rank holds a bound of the matrix, and inside each bound, you can use multiple threads to assemble and do matrix vector product with each of the blocks in parallel. So you have two levels of parallelism. Okay. Okay, so now I will show you how to use all of that stuff in FreeFM. So unfortunately, we ran a little late on the schedule. We wanted to have all of this ready for FreeFM days, but we are almost done. So probably next month everything is fine. So in any case, what I will show you is how it should look in 1 month. So it's a little less cool now, but you can still do that. I will also show you how you can do it right now if you want to get your hands on that. But what I will present is what we want to do and what you will be able to do in 1 month. Alright. So as Xavier said, you have, let's start simple. So you have this equation, which is basically Laplace and most of the equation depending on the value of k. So in general, k is complex, equals 0 is Laplace. If you do k positive real, it's non-dissipative elements. If you add a complex an imaginary part, you can do dissipative elements. And if k is purely imaginary, it is zero. Okay, so this is some threat code. So you can declare your BEM kernel, okay, which only depends on your on k. So I will call k the wave number because I will show you Helmholtz equation. But you can obviously do any of this. And as Xavier showed, you have different formulations, different kernels, right? So you have single layer, double layer, hypersingular, and I think you said, okay, I could transpose the double layer here. And basically, this is a string here that you can specify to define your kernel. And we will see also that you need to also define the potential if you want to reconstruct the field in the domain that you want to visualize. But we will see that after. Okay. So now, now that you can define a kernel, you can use it in a variational problem to define a BEM variational formulation. So it's very similar to FEM, but now instead of int 2D, you have int 2D x 2D times 2D, because you have a double integral, as Xavier mentioned. This is a source and target meshes, so let's keep it simple. As Xavier showed, it's the same mesh, right? We are building a symmetric matrix. And here you put your, this is a BEM keyword to say, okay, I'm going to do BEM, and this is the kernel I want to assemble. Okay? And here you have view V, but you should be able to put any linear combination of U and its derivatives if you want to do more complex stuff, maybe Maxwell and so on. You need more than just U here. But I keep it simple here. Okay. And so you can do that on 3D surface mesh, so on meshes, as Axel showed, you have two types of meshes now. So 2D for 3D surface, and 1D for 2D curve. Okay. And now, as for FEM, instead of using matrix H equal and you assemble your transform, you have a new type in FreeFM that corresponds to an H-tool parallelized H matrix. And you can just do H matrix H equals, and you discretize you pass your variational formulation. UH is your BEM space, I guess, so P1 Lagrange for now, quite simple. And then this will automatically assemble the H matrix in parallel. Okay, and you can also do a little more complex stuff. So as Xavier mentioned, you also have second kind and combine, maybe not combine, but yeah, the second kind formulation. So I think this just amounts, for example, to adding a mass matrix term in the formulation. So for example, double layer kernel plus a max matrix, so you have a coefficient here, will be a second kind formulation. And you can also do a combined formulation. Basically, you combine two kernels together with a linear combination. So for example, hypersingular plus 1 divided by ik times the double layer operator plus a mass matrix once again. And see, this is a combined formulation that can be more robust depending on the problem you want to solve. Okay. Okay, so let's see how to. Yeah, so these are just some parameters that you can do to adjust the compression error and how to use the H2 library. So basically, you need to load this plugin H2_BEM, and you, as I showed, you can just build your matrix from your BEM variational formulation. Automatically, this will use all the MPI processes available. And keep in mind that H2 is a parallel library, so you actually need to run the code using parallel frequent binaries. Even though you want to run in sequential, you just use frequent plus MPI on one core, but you still need to use the parallel version because H2 is a parallel memory. Okay, and these are some parameters for H2. So by default, you compress the Laurent blocks with partial adaptive cross approximation, but you can do other stuff, and SVD if you want to actually compute the exact SVD and test the compression method. This is the target compression error in Frobenius norm for the Laurent approximation of the blocks. 10 to the minus 3 by default. This is the admissibility geometric criterion to say if so the larger eta is, the more blocks we will try to compress more blocks if you increase eta. But that doesn't mean, if the compression doesn't meet the epsilon requirement, we don't compress. So you don't lose any precision by raising eta. And you can play with a little more technical parameters, such as the minimum number of buffs in the block, and the maximum number of coefficients in the block. And if you want to do some fancy MPI stuff, you can specify your commutator if you want to do multiple H matrices in parallel. Okay. Okay, and now how to solve the problem. So now you have a H matrix that you have assembled. Now you want to solve a linear system, HU equals B, right? So this is standard stuff. You declare your finite element space on your, for example, 3D surface meshes. You will be right. I assemble my H matrix. You can display it if you want. You can output some relevant infos about the assembly of H, different subsets, and then you assemble your right hand side. This is standard stuff like in FEM. So for example, I think is the incident wave in case of scattering problem we use the Helmholtz equation. So you assemble your right hand side, and then you have access to the parallel matrix vector product from H2 just by doing that, but you want to solve the linear system. So if you do this operator, by default, it will rely on a GMRise with Jacobi preconditioner by default. So pretty simple in the language. Alright. And now if you want to visualize the solution and reconstruct the solution in the domain, you need to define this. This is another kind of kernels, right, that are designed to reconstruct the solution at some points points in space from the BEM surface solution. So once again, this is usually single layer, and you can now it is a simple integral basically.
It's non-that I mentioned.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Okay, so basically V will be where you want to evaluate this potential. Okay, so this is the same stuff. And now, if you want to visualize and reconstruct the solution on another mesh, so you can create another surface mesh, GH out here, define your finite element space, P1, and then you construct this rectangular H matrix now from this potential. And with this H matrix, you will now be able to reconstruct the field on every node of this finite element space just by doing a matrix vector product between this matrix and your finite elements, your boundary element solution that you computed with the solution of the linear system. So you as the earlier BEM solution. And then you can plot the solution. So that's how we do that. Okay, I have just a complete example. I'll try to be quick. Okay, so you load the plugin. Once again, for example, this is Helmholtz, direct Helmholtz equation, and this is Helmholtz scattering by a disk with directly boundary condition on the circle, right? So this is an incident wave, okay, direction x. You can use, as Axel showed, the border to build a 1D mesh, okay, with the build mesh help command. So let's discretize the circle with 100 points. Then you define your finite element space on this mesh, U and V. We do first kind formulation for Dirichlet. We use a single layer potential. We define the variational BEM formulation. We construct the H matrix from this variational problem. So this assembles the circulation matrix H. We build the right hand side, so minus, depending on the, if you do scattered or total field formulation, but here we need the incident wave in the right hand side. Yeah, so the Dirichlet trace of the incident wave. And then you just solve your linear system. So you have your BEM solution defined on the circle U. And now if you want to reconstruct the field on a 2D domain that is containing the circle, you define your single layer potential, you write the variational formulation for the potential. For example, let's say I want to reconstruct the field in a square around my disk, so square size between -3 and 3, and I remove the disk by adding this circle border, the same border that I define my mesh L with. Okay. And now I define my finite element space on this mesh, and I can now build the rectangular H matrix for the potential, like this, and I define my solution on the output mesh V. I just do a matrix vector product. This will give me the scattered field, so I need to add the incident wave of the total field, like this. And then I can just plot the absolute value, for example. Okay. Alright. So once again, this is not live yet in the current version. But in the BEM branch of the GitHub repository of FreeFEM, you have already more or less this working, but the language is is much less elegant. So basically, for now, there is no variational form, and it is much rigid, right? So for example, if you basically have long names of functions like this, so if you want to do single layer potential for Helmholtz, you just call this function, okay? So this is your finite element space, this is still your wave number, this is the H2 parameter for the compression. If you want to do combined formulation, you can also do that, so combine hypersingular double layer with a mass matrix with coefficient minus half, and the combined coefficient for the double layer like this. So same as before, but much less elegant. Right? And potential is the same, and you have some examples that already use that in the demo. Okay, so I come to show you some numerical results. Oh, let me just open the variant with the animation, I guess. Which is clear, I think. But this is just a trick to have cool animations, so just multiply the solution by exponential ik some angle. Okay, basically this is a plane wave scattering by the Cobra cavity. Basically it's a S-shaped waveguide like this, so this is in 3D. And yeah, so this is a standard P1, 10 points per wavelength. This leads to 33,000 degrees of freedom, and you do directly boundary condition. And as Xavier said, this is a screen, this is an object with with basically no width. So this is a screen cavity, and you can only do first kind formulation. Okay, and so this is the level of compression of the H matrix. And basically, as I just said, this is very ill conditioned, especially at high frequency. So you need to do a little more clever things if you want to converge in your GMRS for solving the linear system. So here, this is still work in progress, but we are already able to do some advanced domain decomposition preconditioning for this kind of problem. So here I use a 2-level domain decomposition preconditioner with a coarse mesh 3 times coarser, so 10 times less DOS, and I only have 3000 DOS on my coarse mesh, so I am able to factorize this matrix with a direct solver, and then I can solve the problem with this preconditioner in only 7 GMRS iterations in 0.5 seconds. So this is with 192 cores, and the assembly of the H matrix took 30 seconds. And in order to reconstruct the field in this plane here, it takes 7 seconds. And now this is plane scattering by a submarine, and this is actually much easier than the Cobra, because we can use, this is not a screen anymore, so we can use a more robust formulation, so for example, combined field formulation. And this is a solution for Neumann boundary conditions. So, sorry, this is wrong frequency. Yes. Okay, so you have 166,000 buffs. Takes less than 1 minute on 1800 cores and 97% compression. And now, for solving the linear system, 1 second with 38 GMRS iterations. And this is actually with a simple Jacobi preconditioner. So basically no preconditioner at all. And this is very robust, as you can see. If you use the first kind formulation, you basically don't converge in 2000 iterations. So there are a lot of differences between the formulations. Okay, the radiation speed for this visualization is 8 seconds. Okay, and now maybe I have 2 minutes. Okay, let me just finish by telling you what is to come. The near and not so near future. So the near future obviously is actually make true what I just showed you. So basically, finally the language in preframe so that you can actually write in an elegant manner the variational formations for boundary element method. We also want to do some vectorial problems, so Maxwell, Stokes, elasticity. We also want to have a direct solver for hierarchical matrices, which will probably help very much in domain decomposition methods if you want to factorize local matrices in the subdomains. So this would be in collaboration with Pierre Marchand. And we also want to investigate domain decomposition preconditioners if your linear system is ill-conditioned, which can happen. There are already some examples in the BEM branch using FFBM on PET-C by Pierre. And for DD of them, I refer to you the thesis of Pierre Marchand that you defend very soon. And obviously, we like to do some fun stuff with the FEM coupling. Right. Okay, and let me maybe just show you a very quick live demo of, for example, the Cobra. Okay. So this is the script for the Cobra. So this is in the BEM branch already, in the BEM directory of the examples directory. So let me just do a quick rundown of the script. Yes. So, so this is what the plugin you need to load. So all of this is just from the mesh. So let's not bother with that. All of this defines the geometry of the Cobra in FreeFrame. So this stops here. Okay. So this is the incident wave, right? So direction 1, 0, 0, x. This is the number of points per wavelength, right? So 10 points per wavelength. Actually, the Cobra is a benchmark for FEM. So I actually have a volume mesh of the Cobra and around the Cobra. And I can just use this build Cobra mesh, that built the volume mesh, because I was lazy, I didn't want to rewrite the macro to build a surface mesh, so I just built the volume mesh, and I just extract in the volume mesh the surface of the Cobra. So this is the volume mesh. As Axel mentioned, I can build the boundary mesh of this volume, and then I can just extract by the dot gamma here the meshes from the volume mesh. And since it was a frame mesh, you had boundaries on the computational box also around the Cobra. I am saying, okay, I just want the metallic borders, right? So just the cavity of the Cobra. So I just say I want to truncate my surface mesh and just keep the actual cavity. Okay, I can plot it. Yes. And this is directly boundary condition. This is exactly the benchmark I showed you, but at a smaller frequency. So this is for now you need to do this stuff if you want to assemble the single layer kernel for elements. This is my web number. This is some parameters for the H matrix. Okay, I've got some infos and I can display the matrix. And then I need to build the right hand side, so you already saw that. This is my right hand side. So here I build it in just by multiplying the by a mass matrix, but it's the same. Okay. Here I solve my linear system. I have my blend solution new, I can plot it on mesh. And then this is the output mesh, so where do I want to visualize my scattered field or my radiated solution? Because this is pretty complicated because it depends on the geometry of the cavity. But then you can build the potential, the H matrix for the potential using this H single layer potential function with some parameters again. You can display the matrix, and you can once again do a matrix vector product with your BEM solution to obtain the radiated field. You have the scattered field. You add the incident wave to have the complete total field. You want to plot the red bar, for example, and that's it. So now if I can run that. So I told you I need to run in parallel, so let's use 4 cores of my machine, or 8 cores. I am hyper threading. So let me okay. So I run that. So this is the mesh. We have only 1,000 dots at this frequency. Okay. So let's go back to the plots. So this is the mesh. This is the H matrix. Okay. So you can also view it in 3D if you want, so why not? To get a good look at what is the actual compression level. So this is the ranks of the blocks. If you press V, you have the actual compression level in each block. Okay, and here I have maybe 92% compression on this matrix. This is my BEM solution. Maybe it tells me how many iterations we do. Oh, sorry, this is the BEM matrix, so 61%. The GMR is converted in 79 iterations, it's just the Jacobi preconditioner. This is my BEM solution. This is the rectangular H matrix for the potential for reconstructing the solution. You see it's very rectangular, right? Because I have 1,000 dots on the Cobra and 10,000 dots on where I want to reconstruct. And this is a reconstructed solution after just the matrix vector product. Right? And so we just it ran in like 6 seconds with the plots. So yeah, I think I will finish with that, and thank you for your attention.
Any question, comment, remark? So thanks again, and
Small remark. I seem to remember that for low frequency, these acceleration technique like fast multiple, they don't work so well.
That's true, but if you have low frequency, you probably have low number of degrees of freedom, so it's fine.
Yeah, but the FMM itself is.
Okay, so I don't know much about FMS.
I think this is specific to FMS because FMS relies on the analytical expression of the kernel, which is not the case of the expression technique.
So for each matrix would be okay. Yeah, it's good to know.
Does it handle time-dependent equations?
That's a good question. I don't know how to do time-dependent equations in Go, actually.
Yeah, it's-
If it's the same in time, it's okay. But
It's quite impossible because you have the complex value, it's the time expression, so what is the time in this case?
So yeah, there are techniques where you can reduce the time dependent method to a set of a series of harmonic regime problems. So there is the convolution quadrature method, for example, but this will not be readily available in full file. But this is a way to reduce time-dependent solution to a series of harmonic regime problems.
if you have a closed mesh, you also need to define your initial solution, which is defined in the volume mesh, so it's weird. If you have an initial U0 that is in the volume, you cannot do that, I guess.
Maybe if you have the formulation, you can try, otherwise. So, thanks for being here. The lunch, I think, is